Hello everyone and welcome back. It's an early Friday morning after a long week turning wrenches. Over the course of this week, I've had a thought bouncing around in my little pea brain. Where is our industry going? What's next for the motor company when you see videos of people showing dealerships full of new motorcycles and some reporting a massive decline in sales? You have to wonder, what's ahead for us? I do believe that history repeats itself, so I think in order for us to have a more clearer picture of what could be coming for us in this industry, I think we need to look at the progression of the motor company. I've said in videos before that the Evo, in my opinion, is not by in itself largely responsible for the restoration and recovery of Harley Davidson. I don't think the Evo can get all the credit. I've also said that people are a little too hard on AMF. They should get more credit for their contributions and what they did. Of course, with those two statements, I'm sure the comments are going to come flooding in. So let's explore the history. Who knows? It may repeat itself. Before we get to the topic at hand, let's talk about this scooter right here. Yes, this Shovelhead FL came all the way here from California. It is a prized family heirloom, and it is in here for a complete and total mechanical restoration. Everything from brakes, wheel bearings, engine, transmission, electrical, and everything in between. Depending on where we fall with the mechanical restoration will determine the aesthetic restoration of it as well. But again, it's a prized family heirloom that came all the way from California, and it came to us from U-Ship. He posted that he wanted to ship this bike to us, got an incredibly fair price on uship.com, and it arrived here by a driver that put as much care and concern into this motorcycle with how he strapped it down and everything else as I will in restoring the bike for its owner. Pay attention to this because it's going to be a series of videos on this restoration as well as the Shovelhead that's directly in behind it. And this bike was shipped via U-Ship, uship.com. There'll be a link in the product description below. And when you're shipping anything heavy, be it an engine, a bike, a car, whatever else, be sure to check out uship.com. Of course, there are a bunch of us out there that are enthusiasts, hobbyists. There are a bunch of us that have chosen to make not only part of their lifestyle, but motorcycling and the sport of it their lifestyle, period, in its entirety. They're all encompassed by this motorcycle life. Me, I, of course, have been in this for a very, very long time, earned my living doing it, and have a passion for building things. That's a lot of my motivation. But then you also have to question others' motivation. I believe a lot of the survival of Harley Davidson has to come down to pop culture and, quite frankly, image. I said before that I think AMF largely has been blamed for some of the decline of the motor company. That era from 1969, I believe it was, to 1981, yeah, there was some manufacturing issues, to say the least. And of course, in 1981, a group of investors, employees, board members, and such got together and paid $80 million to buy it back from AMF. Now, $80 million in 1981, that's about $260, $270 million in today's money. That's quite a bit of coin to pay for a failing company, if you want to look at it that way. Of course, the Evo is largely given the credit for restoring Harley Davidson to its grandeur when it was released in 1984. But I think there's a lot of factors we need to consider in this. And a lot of other things, I believe, played a key role into rebuilding the motor company, and it may also play a key role in continuing it forward, having a resurgence again, and getting back to those days of grandeur. Now, we've got to remember, during the 60s, early 60s, I believe, until around 1978, give or take, Harley was producing or purchased the Aramaki models, or Aramaki, however you prefer to say it. I believe it's Aramaki would be correct. They started doing that in the early 60s. You had the golf carts, you had the 350, you had the M65, you had the Rapidos, the Sprints. Even back into the 50s, you had the Hummer. So Harley was reaching out into various different things, producing a lot more than just their twins during that era. And of course, when AMF bought the company in '69, they just continued on with the production of those models. We also have to remember that during the AMF era, some of the most iconic bikes were produced and introduced during that time. Also, it's said, while not definitive, but general consensus is it took around 7 years to develop the Evo. Now, we have to remember, Evo came out in 1984 models. So if we dial the clock back, the buyout being in 1981, roughly 7 years to develop that engine, largely it was AMF's money that played a key role in developing the Evolution engine. Now, all the bikes that got introduced during the AMF era, we've got to think about the things like in '71, I believe it was. Let's see, you had the XR750, you had the Super Glide, then you had, iconic, '76, you had the Liberty Edition. And then, of course, the Confederate Edition, which was a paint job and a Confederate flag sticker on it. Controversial, but nonetheless, it got people's attention. So that was in '76. But then '77, you had the Lowrider, the XLCR 1000 Cafe. That was a really, really cool bike. That came out '79, I think it was. You had the Fat Bob. Of course, in 1980, the Sturgis model rolls out, which was the first double belt drive bike that was out there. So you had a lot of iconic bikes that were produced during that era. And of course, with the buyout happening in 1981, and the Evo got all the credit in '84. But now we need to think of all the things that happened from the buyout and the years that followed. First off, one big hit was, I believe it was in 1982, where the motor company petitioned Ronald Reagan to change tariffs on import bikes greater than 700 cc's. And the tariff before was 4.5%, if I remember correctly, 4.5% to 5%, give or take. That tariff was raised to almost 50% on bikes greater than 700 cc's. So that made the price difference between your import bikes and your domestic bike a lot closer, making it more attractive to buy a smaller entry-level American-made Harley Davidson. But I think one of the big factors was also in 1983, you had the introduction of the Harley Owners Group. I still believe that a very large part of this motorcycling culture that we're in is everyone wants, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people want to be part of something. They have that innate drive and desire to be part of a group. And Harley Owners Group provided people with that opportunity. I think today there's over 1 million members. And, on average, these days, about 250,000 bikes are sold, give or take. And I believe, I haven't bought a brand new bike in a very long time, I believe they still give you a HOG membership, 1-year membership, when you purchase a new motorcycle. So those 1 million members, is it people that have just recently bought bikes over the past, 4 years? How many are renewing? I don't know that information. But 1 million people strong, wearing a patch and getting pins when they go to different rallies and such, and of course chapters at each dealership, it's a significant impact when it comes to a person's desire to be part of a group. And I think one of the biggest factors was that the Harley Owners Group gave people that sense of belonging and helped to build brand loyalty. And let's face it, it's a brand that people tattoo on their bodies. It's things like buying a Ford truck simply because it had the Harley logo on it and paying exorbitantly more for it. Buying dog dishes and collars, dog collars and leashes and all the various things that the logo's been put on over the years. People will buy that because they feel they belong to the brand. And Harley Owners Group gives them an official way to do that. I think that was a key part and still is a key part in maintaining that brand loyalty. So also we have to remember in that era, in 1984, the Softail, the Hidden Shock, the bike that looks like a hardtail but has a suspension on it. In '84, the motor company bought that design from a fellow named Bill Davis, and certainly the Softail model has been a very, very popular model for Harley Davidson over the years. That was in 1984. But over the course of this entire history of the motor company, they have been reinventing themselves and diving into multiple other markets. As a matter of fact, from, I believe it was 1984, I think it was, or maybe 1986, and for about 10 years, all the way, I think it was to 1996 or 97, give or take, Harley Davidson owned Holiday Rambler. They were in the RV business, which is crazy, but nevertheless, they owned Holiday Rambler. Then we have to think of the other reinventions of the brand. You had the release of the V-Rod. You had the partnership with Buell. Then they came out, of course, with the Livewire. And then you have electric bicycles and all that kind of stuff. Production facilities. We have to look at what's happened over the years there. Now, everyone freaked out, and I think it was 2010 when they opened up the plant in India. Well, that plant stayed active, I believe it was, until 2020. But in 1998, they opened a factory in Brazil. That factory is still operating, as well as one in Thailand. So there's always been a bit of an outreach at plants outside the country, 2 or 3 in particular. But then they also explored other markets in 2008, purchasing MV Agusta. Now, they only owned it for, 2 years, but expressed interest, after only owning it a year in 2009, that they wanted to sell it. Well, in 2010, the original family, starts with a C, and it's, of course, an Italian name, and I can't pronounce it. They bought the company, MV Agusta, back from Harley Davidson in 2010. So in large part, you could say that since it was essentially restored and financially solid again, you could say that Harley Davidson did for MV Agusta potentially what AMF did for Harley Davidson. Boosted them, gave them money, new market potential, and developing new models of motorcycles. So you could look at it that way. Now we have to look at the other expansions. You have motor clothes, you have the co-branding again with the trucks and that sort of thing that puts us into many different markets. Now, there have been several other things that we have to consider that has also given not only the motor company itself, but our entire industry and individual motorcycle shops and parts suppliers a boost. Of course, the biker build-off shows. The motor company was on a pretty decent decline there in the early 2000s and had a pretty good run on the Discovery Channel there. The independent biker build-off shows, and then, of course, OCC and all that stuff. People, again, it built their desire to be a part of something. And yeah, there was a bit of a transference from owning a factory bike to then owning a custom bike. And then you had a bunch of custom companies that popped up out of everywhere. Big Dog, Iron Horse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You had all those. So there was another resurgence there, and I think the next one came along with our global pandemic. We were told that we couldn't be in groups of people, that we needed to go off and do our own things. Well, not only did the motorcycling industry see an enormous boost, so did the RV industry, so did side-by-sides, and camping, virtually any activity that did not require close human contact, they saw a significant boost. But most recently, we have to consider a dive into another market that the motor company has made with the release of the Pan America. I put up a poll a couple of weeks ago on the community tab asking the question, have you ever considered an adventure motorcycle? And if you have, would you buy anything other than an HD? 65% of the respondents said that they have considered an adventure bike and would consider all other models. Interesting. With only 10% of the respondents saying that they would only consider an HD, but they have considered an adventure bike, and of course the rest saying that they would never own one. That's a big swing, 65% to 10%, on whether or not they would buy an HD, even though they've considered adventure bikes. Why is that? Is it because brand loyalty may be fading a little? Could it be because people recognize that there are other companies that have been in that market sector for quite a long time and may have perfected their motorcycle? Could it be features, benefits? Could it be pricing? It's hard to say. Could it be that the adventure bike community out there largely consists of other brands of motorcycles, and people that are considering a format change of motorcycling or just playing in the dirt again want to be a part of that group instead of being a part of the Harley owners group? It's hard to say. But what I can also tell you is, again, this isn't the first time. In fact, in the 80s, Harley did produce a liquid-cooled four-cylinder called the Nova. It was a concept bike and never really got released, and it was not an attractive thing. Nonetheless, I wouldn't have stood in line to buy a Nova myself. All that said, I would love to hear your comments and what you think. Are you interested in adventure bikes? Where does your brand loyalty sit? Would you still get a Bar and Shield tattoo? Would you still buy a truck with a Bar and Shield logo? Do you still have a hog membership? And if you do, why? If you don't, why? Inquiring minds want to know. It could be a very good indication as we share some of these comments in our community as to what the future holds for our industry and the motor company, and quite frankly, our hobby. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thanks again for watching. We've got some cool stuff coming, more videos, and the clutch stuff. Of course, we'll be painting the panel for the All Kids Bike thing, which did get fully funded. Check's been received, and we're arranging receipt of the bikes as it stands right now. And I'm going to get back to work and turn more wrenches. Great tech videos coming. Have a great weekend, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. Have a good one.